work within a creative community, all the songwriters I know are curious about everything. They read, and trying to learn all the time. And I would say that anybody who's wanting to be, no matter whether they're trying to be a songwriter or a screenplay writer or a journalist or whatever, the best advice is to stay curious, to always want to learn, to live a life of constant learning. My grandmother was 96 years old when she died, and she wanted to learn every single day of her life. You just can't let your life get bogged down by status quo. You gotta keep moving.
Welcome to Curious Goldfish, a podcast community where music and curiosity come together through interesting conversations with the music makers of our world. I'm your host, Jason English. You can find Curious Goldfish in all the major podcast and social media platforms. And of course, we have all of our content on our website, curiousgoldfish.com. Hey folks, welcome back to Curious Goldfish, a music podcast about more than music. I'm Jason English. There's an old country music cliche that all you need to write a great song is 3 chords and the truth. But if you actually sit down and try to do it, especially when your benchmark includes people like Jackson Browne or Bob Dylan, you quickly realize it's a whole lot harder than it looks. Our guest today spent decades working behind the scenes in Nashville as a high-profile publicist for legends like Guy Clark and Nanci Griffith. He kept his own songwriting completely separate for years, mostly out of pure integrity. He didn't want anyone thinking he was building a career off the backs of his famous clients. But lately he stepped into his own spotlight, releasing a string of incredibly poignant albums that prove he belongs in the conversation. The latest is called The Air That You Breathe, and it's out this summer. We talk about what it's like to start a brand new creative chapter later in life and why keeping a sense of emotional honesty in your work matters so much. So now from Nashville, Tennessee, here's Lance Cowan. Let's dive in. Hey, Lance.
Hey, Jason, how are you? Nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you again. I appreciate you jumping on. You got a lot going on. I first met you a few months ago down at the Opelika Songwriters Festival. Yeah. So I'm really excited to talk with you. I've got so many questions, but congrats on the upcoming album. It's called The Air That You Breathe.
That's right.
So, tell me about that. What's the headline for the new album?
Well, I guess the headline is that it's the third record that I've done in the last 3 years. I'm having to crank them out. I didn't put out a record for so long, and that first record I put out was really just a calling card just to get me some new venues. But then people liked it, and it kind of validated what I was doing, and I thought, I'll do a second one. Well, that record did really well, so now I'm doing a third. I'm just testing. But The Air That You Breathe was a song I wrote with a really good friend of mine named Karen Leipzinger. She is a longtime publicist and music industry insider, and we've just been friends forever. We started writing together last summer. I was trying to get this record written, and it was her idea to write this song because there's so many of us at my age that have for years not done the music thing because they had other jobs, other obligations. And that's what this song is about, is all the guys we know that, now that I'm doing it, it seems like there's so many of us who are in their second chapter or third chapter of life. And it's kind of a way to honor these dreamers that have not given up a dream.
That's so cool. All right. So your background's crazy. So not crazy, but like crazy cool. So I have a journalism degree from the University of Missouri.
Oh, you went to the good school. Well, that was a good one.
That was pretty good.
Yeah. Their reputation's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So I did that. I was a reporter for a couple of years. I loved it, but I started having kids and I was like, okay, I need to actually make money. But yeah, so you're a journalist in Western Kentucky, and then you did that for a while, which is awesome. And then got into publicity in Nashville, sounds like. So
yeah,
I guess my first question is, Were you writing songs like behind the scenes for decades, or did you wait?
No, I've been writing songs, trying to learn. I thought when I moved to Nashville, I thought writing country music would be so easy. And, and I went to see a group of guys, Don Schlitz, Tom Schuyler, Fred Knobloch, and Paul Overstreet, who are at the time were the premier writers in town. And I went to the Bluebird and saw them and left thinking country music's not easy to write well. So I had to start learning how to write better. I think a lot of people make that mistake when they get here, is that they think they can do it with no problem. But these guys, I realized early on that my competition was not the guy I was spending Saturdays playing with. My competition were those guys. And then I realized later my competition, or the bar that I need to set, is Jackson Browne and Bob Dylan, guys like that. So I started listening a lot more closely to their craft. And I don't know. It seemed to click in for me, and I'm still learning though. I was fortunate also though, because I worked with great songwriters. I worked with Joe Ely for 38 years now, 38 years till he passed last year. I worked with Guy Clark and Nanci Griffith, so I got to see the kind of stuff they were bringing in, and realized that if I was going to pursue this art, I needed to be better. And I'm still working on that.
So is it more than three chords and the truth?
Yeah, it is. But the truth is important. I heard I talk about this in the bio. I heard an interview with Paul Simon a few years ago, and Paul Simon was saying, how important it is for a songwriter to be a reporter, which of course you and I would appreciate that with a background in journalism, and that is to be truthful in your songs. And so I really started focusing on trying to write emotional truths, storylines that didn't seem preposterous but seemed real, and I try and portray things pretty honestly. So, and I think that connects with people. Yeah. But I think that that's really an important part of songwriting, is to maintain a truthfulness and not get sloppy with your lyric just because something fits. On the last record, I have a song called "Prayer for a Child," and that song is really truthful to the emotion I was feeling right before my son was born. It's an old song, but I can remember that because it was such an important song to me, I had to really focus on every single word, making sure it really conveyed what I wanted it to convey. I hear songs all the time. I heard one the other day. The first line in it is so stupid. And it's like, you could have spent 3 more minutes on that and come up with a better line. Something about you came in and I had to stare and I fell out of my chair. That kind of stupid line. And I just thought, that is such a stupid lyric. And I try to be a little more intelligent than that. I don't know. I used to think anybody could write songs, and it's hard writing songs. And then of course you got to put it out there where everybody can laugh at you if it's a bad song. And that kind of gets back to the first record I did. The first record was an album of songs I had written, back in the 90s. And I had a publisher, and he had demoed them. We didn't get any cuts on any of those songs. And so I was never really sure what the reaction would be. And when I started getting press on it, it was incredibly validating. So it gave me a lot of confidence to write along the same style. It's hard to explain what songwriting is. It's still a very mystical, spiritual thing for me, and it's hard to explain it. When it's right. I know good songs. I mean, I I know what a good song is. That doesn't mean I can always write a good song, but I know at the end when it's written, I know whether it's good or not. My wife gets real frustrated because I'll write a song and she'll come in and she'll say, "So what do you think about it?" And I say, "Well, I don't know yet." And she's like, "Oh, come on, it takes me a while. It takes me a while to make sure that everything is done is correct."
At what moment in your life did you sort of have the epiphany of like, okay, I think I can do this? And were there times throughout all the people that you worked with, maybe not like Guy Clark and Nanci Griffith, because like they're incredible, but did you ever think to yourself, okay, if this guy's doing it, if this woman's doing it, I can probably do it, you know?
Yeah, I guess so. From the time I was 17 or 18, I was out playing and I wanted to express myself. I don't know that I really ever thought if this guy's doing it, I can do it. I just, I just started trying to write.
Yeah.
But it really wasn't until I was, 26 that I, I realized what I had to, what my bar had to be. And I'll tell you, among the greatest things that ever happened to me were playing at the Bluebird one night. And after I played, uh, Don Schlitz and Fred Knobloch had come into the bar. It was a bar then, as much a bar as a performance room, but they had been out golfing and they came to the Bluebird. And when I got off stage, they both waved me over to buy me a beer. And I'm not a beer drinker, but I sipped along politely just to be with them. But it was that encouragement that let me know I was on the right track. A similar thing happened with Janis Ian when she came to see me one night, and she didn't come to see me. I just happened to be playing when she was there. And I have a song, and it's on the first record called Fields of Freedom. And after I played, she came up to me. The song has a line in it called "The Numbers on Her Wrist Were Her New Name." I wrote it after seeing Escape from Sobibor with Alan Arkin. It's a picture of a concentration camp in World War II. And she came up afterward and she was acted like she was irritated. And she said, "I'm a Russian Jew and I've been trying to find an angle to write about. And here this Scotch-Irish kid from Kentucky writes this song." And that was very validating. She asked me to write with her, the song we wrote is actually on the new record when he was here. But she took that line, "The numbers on her wrist were her new name," and she wrote a song called Tattoo.
Oh, wow.
And of course, hers got cut by a bunch of people. The song she and I wrote, Joan Baez toured with for about a year and a half. Now, she didn't record it, but she toured with it. But it was validating. And, when you get guys like that who, they know better. They know when there's a good song or not. And that says to me, yeah, I can do this.
Yeah, for sure. So do you wait to record your own stuff because of your family obligations with your sons? Or is it more sort of a deference to the people that you're working with that like to sort of say, okay, I'm not distracted by my own stuff? What was it, more one or the other?
It's probably a little bit of both, honestly. I went to Toronto years ago to Focal Lines. BMI had sent me up there, and I played with Chip Taylor, who wrote Wild Thing and Angel of the Morning. And he and I were in a round. And, I was thinking then that I would record my own records. But then I looked out and I saw, 500 people with their CDs. And I had 2 small kids at home. And I told my wife, I said, if I do this, I'm going to be gone all the time. I won't know my kids. So I refocused on doing my PR. But I always kept a really defined line between my songwriting and my clients. Most of them didn't know I wrote a song. It was years after working with Joe Ely that he ever knew I wrote the first song. I just thought for one thing, I didn't want to look like I was building a songwriter career off Joe Ely's back. or Nanci Griffiths or Lyle or, any of those guys. I just thought there's an integrity line there that I didn't want to cross. And so I didn't do it. And now, even now when I'm talking to clients, I try not to, certainly because they're paying me and I can't put my stuff ahead of their paycheck, because they still give me a retainer to represent them. And I can't call up, a publication and say, hey, before I talk to you about this guy, let's talk about me.
Right.
So luckily, I have a manager who does that for me. I do provide him with emails, and it's funny because I've known some of these journalists for, some of them 30, 35 years, and it's so funny when I first sent my record to them, I didn't call them. I am not going to call and say, hey, are you reviewing my record? I'm not going to do that. But some of them told me that when they saw it come across their desk, because they were good friends, they thought, oh my gosh, if I hate this, it's, Lance will know I hate it. And they, and a good journalist is going to have to be honest with the reviews. And luckily they liked it. So, but yeah, I don't really, pitch it to, unless it's a really great friend of mine. I'm not, I'll let them get a copy or tell them that there's a this or that going on, but I don't really pitch it.
Are you still doing publicity then, it sounds like?
Yeah. I still have 5 or 6 clients, and a couple of them are amazing songwriters. I work with Gary Nicholson, who has over 700 cuts from everybody from Ringo Starr to Willie Nelson he wrote Trouble with the Truth for Patti Loveless, and he wrote One More Last Chance for Vince Gill. And he's an amazing writer. And I also represent Pat Alger, who wrote Unanswered Prayers and Thunder Rolls and Once in a Very Blue Moon and Going Gone. And, they're Hall of Fame writers. Now, I am playing with Pat. I've got some dates I'm playing with Pat. I've known him a long time, and he's very encouraging to me. Gary's really encouraging as well. I've not written with him or played with him, but I have to keep there's a measured distance you have to keep in that. I would hate for Gary to think when I called him that, okay, when are we going to write a song together? In PR, I've always kind of thought I was working with the guys I needed to work with, that, it was the time for me to work with them. That keeps you from being upset when somebody you thought you were going to work with goes with some other publicist. But, I have to kind of, keep that straight in my head.
Oh, that's good. Well, very good. So I have a couple questions about some of the songs on the new album. So it's great. So let's go back to Janis. Did you really write that with her 35 years ago or whatever it was?
Well, that after I met her that night at the Bluebird, she asked me if I would write a song with her. And it's like, oh yeah, Twist My Arm. I've been a fan of Janis Ian since I was a kid. I can remember her being the first musical artist on Saturday Night Live. And I remember it like it was yesterday, seeing her on there. She played 17. It was, oh my gosh. So when she asked me, I was very nervous. I went to see her at her place, and we spent, I guess, 3 or 4 Saturdays together writing. And she's unbelievably generous to me. And, she listened to my ideas. You can hear her version of that same song on my website. Last year she did a video of it. And I put it on my website. Her version's a lot slower than mine. Hers is really intimate and quiet, and it just doesn't work for me to perform it. When we were in the studio, we had 10 tracks done, and we had time to do one more. And my producer, Scott Pascal, said, "Why don't we try When He Was Here?" And I'm like, well, it's awfully slow, and and Dave Pomeroy, who's, played bass for everybody and their brother from Don Williams to Elton John, he said, why don't we do it a little more Tom Petty like. And Pat McGrath, who is the band leader, started playing like a Tom Petty kind of rhythm. And it's like, oh my God, that's amazing. And then when we pulled in the backing vocals, which were Chip Davis and Billy Davis, and they've got resumes as long as your arm about singing on records, it made it sound like a Crosby, Stills, and Nash song to me. The harmonies are just incredible on it. And it is nothing like Janis's version. The melody is the same, but it's a different feel. And I was sweating about playing it for Janis because I really wanted her to be proud of the song and the arrangement. And I told the guys and said, if she doesn't like this, we're not going to put it on the record. And luckily, she got back with me really fast, and she seems to really like it. So, but I was sweating.
Well, I know it's been a long time, but does anything stick out at you at that writing session? And did you just write this song?
It's the only song we wrote together. It's all very clear in my mind. I can remember it seemed like 3 or 4 of the weekends I would get up and be over at her house on Saturdays at like 9:30 or 10 and write just a couple hours. And it seemed like every Saturday was raining. What I remember, and I don't think she would mind me telling you, but she had gone through a really tough time with her accountant. I don't know how much you know about her history, but she had a financial guy who really mistreated her. And she had gotten in a lot of trouble with the IRS because of that. And so she was bouncing back, as it were. And I remember being at her place, and it was nothing too fancy. I think it was a duplex. And I remember seeing all her gold and platinum albums stacked up on the wall, leaning against the wall because she hadn't hung them yet. And I thought it was amazing. She was on a Kiss record, which, that didn't seem, but what I really remember was how generous she was to me. She treated me like I was an equal, though clearly I was still learning at the time. And I look at it as a real teaching experience for me. I think the world of her. She's been remarkably successful, and she's been wildly gracious to me. She especially, when for years I really didn't talk to her much after we wrote this song. I would bump into her once in a while, and but she knew I was a publicist and that was my focus. And when I put the first record out, she was among the first people to contact me and say, "Send me a copy. I really want that record."
Oh, that's cool.
And I think, now I haven't asked her about this, but I think that she did the video last year as much just to kind of help me out.
Oh, that's great.
That's how I look at it. I may be wrong, but when she did her documentary, she has a documentary out now that I would encourage any new artist, songwriter to watch, called Breaking Silence. And fortunately for me, she talks about me. She name checks me in that and in the book, in which, just to show how generous she is, how many writers do you know that will tell where they got the idea for their song? Right. And Janis is very gracious in doing that. It's pretty cool of her.
So the song when he was here, I think it's about divorce. Is that a?
It's exactly what it's about.
You mentioned telling the truth earlier. Like, is that a personal story of you?
I think it was more personal to Janis. Okay. But I think the emotion is very truthful. Yeah. And I think it really, it's funny. The guy who was the executive producer on this record, Terry Egan, he's a real positive, energetic, positive guy. And he was really worried about that song because it's not a positive lyric at all.
Yeah.
It can be a little bit depressing.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, before my mother died, I started doing those videos on Facebook, and I played that song on Facebook the way Janis did. And the last time I saw my mother, she said, that she had seen that song. She said, "It's just such a sad song. Play it for me, would you?" Just like, okay, but that's the last song I ever played for my mother.
Oh, wow. Dang.
Yeah, she died suddenly. It was not,
Oh.
so I wouldn't have left her with that.
Well, you mentioned some of the folks that played on the band or did the backing vocals for the album. So I think one of the guys actually I interviewed a couple years ago, Phil Madera.
Yeah, boy.
I mean, you talk about
Stunning.
like legend, a legend. And I think what I want to ask you, I had a great conversation with him primarily about faith. You know, he's had a whole journey with just his perspective on life and faith and everything like that. So and it sounds like from your music, and I think where you're from and all those things, it feels like faith is an important part of your journey. I guess has that always been the case, and has that evolved? From whatever 1990 to 2026.
It's I grew up Southern Baptist. Well, we were a family that was there every Sunday night, Wednesday night, and all of my best friends growing up went to church where I did. I did start going to different churches, but it was always important to me. But I have to admit, the last decade has been a challenge for me. It's been somewhat of a crisis of faith, maybe. There are things that I see that I learned growing up that don't seem to matter as much to the people who taught it to me. I really struggle with that. And I think in the first song on the record, Love, I don't know if you're ready to talk about that, but Love is about how as I've gotten older, all those things I was taught when I was younger have come into question, and whether I really believe those things that I did growing up. It's a real struggle for me because it's so ingrained in me that I struggle with that now. To be honest with you,
I mean, I'm with you. I mean, that same thing. Sunday night, Sunday morning, Saturday night, Wednesday night, Friday night youth group, like, church, vacation Bible study, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Not to get into it, but it's crazy to see or to think back all the sermons I listened to and all the Sunday school lessons I listened to, and I'm going, none of that matters anymore.
I tell you, I got up one morning to go to church, and it seemed like for a long time at the church we attended, every week was about gays. Gays are an abomination. That's it. I think it would be easier for a serial killer to get forgiveness than a gay person, and then they say, love the sinner, hate the sin. Well, I don't think that's a sin. And I got up one morning, got dressed to go to church. My wife was still getting ready, and I went out and I flipped on the TV, and James Dobson was on, and he started railing against gays. And I turned off the TV and I went back and I changed. I said, I'm not going back. I'm not sitting with people who believe that. The values are different. And then of course with, not to get political or anything, but what I see that community willing to accept now, I can't do it. I can't go sit with people who are willing to, who will say one thing and are willing to accept what's going on now.
Sure.
It's really despicable to me.
What?
And
one thing about this podcast, I've had the pleasure of meeting all these different people. Again, the lion's share of who I talk to are Americana, country, folk, indie rock. It tends to be, obviously I'm in Atlanta, so Southeast, Nashville, and a lot
Bible Belt.
Yeah, Bible Belt. And a lot of these artists grew up similar backgrounds to you and me, and it's fascinating. Not all of them, but a lot of them have really, really had to kind of like have a reconciliation of all this, and it, on one hand, it's led to great art. It's led to great music. But it's wild to think that all the hours, literally the thousands of hours that we all collectively invested
I don't know what to think about that, you know? It's
Yeah.
just been fascinating to kind of hear everybody's feedback. I mean, not everybody's like completely deconstructed, all the things, but yeah, it's pretty wild.
I found that with Phil, he was on such the same page as I am. And of course, his involvement in Christian music was a lot more than mine ever was. But, talking to guys like that, and I don't, I don't know exactly where Phil's faith lies now, but he's really open-minded, and it was really great. And I find that in all of my clients. And of course, when I'm working with Joe Ely and Jimmy Dale Gilmore and guys like that, and I'll tell you a funny story about Joe Ely, but that has to do with faith a little bit. I never knew what faith Joe was specifically. I think he seems to have studied Eastern religion quite a bit. And I know Jimmy Dale is Buddhist, but I called Joe. Well, I called a New York program director at one point, and he got really mad at me I can't remember what he got mad at me about. But the last thing he said before he slammed the phone down in my ear was, "I'll never play another Joe Ely record as long as I live." Slam. And it was an important station I had in New York. And I called Joe up completely expecting to be fired. And I went through it step by step, just, sweating the whole time. And after it all ended, Joe said, "Bake him a pie." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Nobody can be mad at you if you bake them a pie." And I sent the guy a big box of Christie cookies and an apology letter, and we got along great till the guy retired years later. But it's some of the most valuable advice I ever got. I told Joe how much I appreciated that not long ago, and he told me that's a Buddhist principle. That he was, and I've got 3 or 4 clients who are Buddhist now, and they're the most easy to get along with people in the world. They just, I never saw Joe mad about anything. Yeah. He was always the most even keel client. Now, I work with a guy named David Bennett Cowan, who is a founding member of Country Joe and the Fish. And he is always the easiest guy on the planet to get along with. It's like, I don't know. I mean, that's a different religion, of course, than I grew up with. But my wife always said she had problems with her father because she was a religious zealot. And she always said, if I'd been born in India, I'd have been Hindu. If I'd been born in the Middle East, I might have been Islam or Jewish or, so why is this the only answer? And, and I think about that, there's a lot of truth to that. So in the song Love, the line is, all after the good books have been read and the questions and the prayers have all been said, more questions than answers linger in my head. And that pretty well sums it up. I still am searching, though not as curious as I used to be. People will ask me, "Do you read your Bible and study it?" No, I've had, 55 or 60 years of that, and I'm ready to take a break at this point.
Which is interesting because when you're in the church, I always felt compelled to either know or you act like you had to know, like it's black or white. And so living in the gray and living in the ambiguity never was really part of the muscle memory. But
right.
I feel like now it's healthy to actually, if you go, again, I still like going to church. I still sing hymns, but that doesn't mean that I have to believe every single word and know for certain that this is it, this is it. Right. And so it sounds like you're the same mindset. The questions are the questions and it should be fine. Right.
Yeah. I think doubt is a healthy part of the religion. Because doubt makes you dive deeper. And as I say, I'm not diving particularly deep now, but I do see the value of doubting because it makes you want to learn more.
Yeah.
Now I'm right with you on that. I spent years studying it, and maybe it's just. I don't know that it's such a question now, but whether I believe in, whether I have that absolute belief in God, I don't know that changed so much. It's more my tolerance of organized religion
Right.
that really has kind of pushed me back. I used to say my relationship with God has not changed, but I really am not interested in organized religion.
Got it. Okay.
I don't, as I've gotten into it more, I don't even know that that's true anymore.
Okay.
It'll straighten itself out eventually, I'm sure. I'm just, kind of in a take a break kind of mode right now.
No, totally respect that. So another song I wanted to ask you about that's on the album is one you wrote about 20 years ago, William Cooper Smith, that you co-wrote with is it Miguel Salas?
Yeah.
So it's about sounds like a tragic Western character.
Yeah, it's all made up. It's all made up. Yeah, Miguel came over to the house and we started out with the name. That's one of those songs that starts with the first lines of the song. His name was William Cooper Smith. Well, logically, he had to be from Fort Smith, Arkansas. Well, and what do you do in Fort Smith, Arkansas? You become a sheriff, and it may have been around the time that I read True Grit, because that was where that was based. And anyway, you got to kill somebody in every record has to kill somebody. It was so funny when we were recording this. We sat the musicians would sit in the control room, and I would play the guitar part for them, so they got the feel. And Phil Madeira was standing right in front of me when I played it. And when I got to the line, he put a bullet through his head. Phil goes, "Well, that's nice." I couldn't hardly sing it, just laughing every time I sang it. But that I think the band just really captured the tension that needed to go through that song. And of course, we brought in Jimmy Dale Gilmore to sing harmony vocals on the chorus. And Sam Bush came in, and he and Dan Dugmore, trading licks on it. Was, oh man,
dang!
It's not a bad little band,
Well, you've used the word validation like 2 or 3 times. I mean, that's got to be validating the people will actually come and contribute to the album, right?
Well, Dan has played on all 3 of my records, and Sam has played on 2 of them. But it's hard to it's kind of hard to admit that they're there because they like the songs, because so many of them have done work with me in the past. Like I represented Phil Madeira, and I represented Newgrass Revival was my first client as a publicist. Not a bad way to start. But, are you doing it as a favor, or are you doing it just because you like the songs? Well, I remember on the first record, Sam played Sound of My Home on it. And gotta tell you, when I listen to his performance as the fade is going out, I get teary-eyed thinking, he's playing on. But, he has told me he wouldn't do it if he didn't like the music. And I think that the songs bring out that kind of performance on someone who likes it.
Yeah.
On this record, I realized, and Scott and I talked about this quite a bit, I realized that these guys who are playing on this record, they are all artists. They're not just sidemen. They're artists. And they're producers. They all produce records too. They didn't have to do this.
Right.
I wasn't paying them so much money they couldn't turn me down. And what I've really appreciated is how many times I'm hearing through the grapevine from these guys that they're telling other people how much they love this project.
So cool.
Yeah, Michael Spriggs. I've not even met Michael Spriggs. She was a friend of Scott Pascal. Michael came and played little touches on several songs. And, and he loves all these songs. And I'm just, God, how, how did I get these guys on this record?
Well, I mean,
I still marvel about it. I really do.
I mean, it's a great question, but you should feel great about it. I think your friendship and your network means something, but they wouldn't do it they wouldn't do it just because you're a friend. I think they actually respect the art. So like that's right. Like these guys are too busy to do favors for people.
Well,
right.
They're also successful. They could have gotten other jobs playing that day.
Yeah.
But what's been real amazing to me, and this happened on the last record too, was after the deal. I would hire them for 3-hour sessions. We'd do 2 sessions we recorded it on Valentine's Day. The first tracking day was Valentine's Day, and the next day. But how much time they gave me beyond what I was paying them for.
Oh, cool.
That how much of a contribution they made beyond that. Sam was supposed to be there 3 hours. So I think we hung out about 5.
Oh, that's nice.
And it's just, but they seem to want to get their part right.
That's great.
Now, having said that, what's amazing is when you've got this caliber player, how hard is it for them to get their part right? That just, that's why we got over 2 days, we got 11 songs tracked.
Yeah.
Because these guys are so amazing.
Great.
Of course, Scott did so much pre-production work on it, Pascal. And he's been one of my best friends for years. And he did for months ahead of time. He was getting pre-production notes together. But what's funny, we did Suno as pre-production stuff, just because I wanted to see, well, one, that's like Call of Duty for a musician, I couldn't stop when I figured out how to just basically put stuff in there. Have you played with it yet?
I haven't. I've talked to a lot of people that have, yeah.
It's kind of a dirty word to say you deal with AI, but like William Cooperson is a good example. That the Suno track that I did really captured the energy that I wanted. But when I got into the studio, Scott and I talked about it, and we said, should we play these tracks for the band so they could hear what Suno's doing? And Scott and I both decided, you're talking to Dan Dugmore, Phil Madeira, Brian Owens. These are guys, they don't need Suno. So we never played a note of Suno for these guys. Not a note, because we want, the other thing is, I wanted them because they're artists. I wanted their input, their creative input. And man, did I get it.
Interesting. Wow, that's good.
It's really cool when you're dealing with guys like that too, who are all producers and they all have their own ideas. And yet you have 5 guys in there working together at the same time. And how they work together as a team is remarkable. Nobody's going, no, I want it done like this. It's like I said, Pomeroy made that suggestion of doing it more Tom Petty-like, and everybody fell right in line with it. Nobody argued with him about it. Nobody said, well, what if we did?
Yeah.
These guys all work great together.
That's so cool.
They're used to it.
Well, yeah.
And I got to tell you, when I have Dan Dugmore in there, I think, holy cow, I'm sitting in here with Dan Dugmore.
That's awesome. Well, so thanks for your time, Lance. So the Air That You Breathe is out June of 2026. So congrats on
July. It's out July the 24th.
July the 24th.
I wanted it out, but we didn't get it till the 24th.
So it's out July 2026. So congrats on that. I guess one last question. I know you have to run, but so you mentioned the word curiosity earlier. Like the theme of this podcast is curiosity. I guess at this point, with all the things that you've done in your career and all the people that you've worked with, and now that you're making the music, I guess, what are you most curious about?
How I can make a living doing this. I'm curious about a lot of things. I try not to get too wrapped up in certain topics, which we mentioned earlier. I'm curious as I'm going forward in life, what it's going to be like for me and my wife. I'm curious about what the world's going to look like for my two sons. And not liking the way it's looking right now, but I think it's a shame we're leaving this mess to these kids. But I think that's a great thing about being a songwriter, though. And I tell you, when you work within a creative community, all the songwriters I know are curious about everything.
Sure.
They read, and trying to learn all the time. And I would say that anybody who's wanting to be, no matter whether they're trying to be a songwriter or a screenplay writer or a journalist or whatever, the best advice is to stay curious, to always want to learn, to live a life of constant learning. My grandmother was 96 years old when she died, and she wanted to learn every single day of her life. You can't let your life get bogged down by status quo. You gotta keep moving. And I love that. I love the name of your podcast. And of course, Ted Lasso is a favorite of ours. And when you told me, when we met in Opelika, what a great name for a podcast.
That's awesome. You just made my day.
Yeah,
I love that. Thank you for that. Well, thanks for your time, and well said about curiosity. That was a great answer. So thank you for sharing, and best of luck with the album, and hope to see you soon, Lance.
Thanks, Jason.
All right.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me,
man.